All right, let's jump right into this. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're tackling a nightmare scenario that absolutely strikes dread into the heart of any homeowner. Yet we're talking about the sudden water damage emergency. We're unpacking a critical survival guide to help you navigate this kind of chaos, and we're going to put a specific focus on the unique challenges you face in humid climates, like Greenville, South Carolina. Because as we're going to see today, the water you can actually see, well, that's really only half the battle. When a pipe bursts or a bad storm hits, the clock starts ticking immediately, and in highly humid areas, natural drying slows way down, which drastically increases your risk for hidden moisture and mold. So how do you react when the worst happens? Let's find out.
Here is a quick look at our roadmap for today. First, the water damage emergency. Then, first steps, stop and secure. Next, how to clear water and protect belongings. After that, we'll cover the hidden moisture threat, and finally, why professional mitigation matters.
I want you to imagine this just for a second. You walk into your home, or maybe you wake up in the pitch black in the middle of the night, and you hear it. Running water. Your house is flooding. Do you actually know your very first move? It is so easy to just freeze in a panic, but acting fast before water permanently destroys the structure of your home is absolutely paramount. See, water damage gets exponentially worse over time. It's not just about the initial spill. It's the fact that moisture actively keeps moving through your home's materials long after that initial event.
Section 1. First steps, stop and secure. Okay, step 1, and this is crucial, stop the water source. Before you grab a towel, before you try to move a rug, you literally must stop the water intrusion, if it's safe to do so, of course. Because the longer that water flows, the more deeply materials become saturated. This might mean you need to shut off your home's main water supply, quickly stop an overflowing appliance, or maybe isolate a burst pipe. Step 2 is prioritizing your safety and avoiding hazards. Water damage creates all sorts of invisible, dangerous traps. You have to be incredibly cautious of standing water near electrical outlets. Look up. Are there sagging ceilings that might collapse on you? Watch out for super slippery flooring, and please be extremely wary of any contaminated water exposure.
If you take a look at this exposed plumbing right under the sink, it's a great example. If a supply line bursts here, reaching in and twisting those shutoff valves is your absolute first line of defense. It really reinforces the necessity of stopping the water flow right at the source to prevent even more saturation. Now, if you can't stop it here, you really have to know where your main water shutoff valve is for the entire house. Every single gallon that escapes is just another gallon that's going to soak into your floors, your baseboards, and your subfloor.
Moving on to Section 2, clear water, protect belongings.
Simply put, the faster you remove standing water, the lower your risk of permanent damage. You're going to want to extract any pooled water using a wet vac, if you happen to have one, or by pumping it out. But you also need to rapidly protect your contents from secondary exposure. Move furniture off wet floors immediately. Wood furniture can actually leach terrible stains right into wet carpets. And stuff like particle board, it'll swell up instantly. Separate your wet fabrics so the colors don't bleed together, and absolutely remove all electronics from the affected areas to protect them from both the direct water and the rising humidity.
This right here is what that triage looks like in action. Notice how the belongings in this bedroom, the bed, the mattress, the surrounding items, they've all been completely draped and sealed up in heavy plastic. When a water event happens, the damage spreads really quickly through your contents. Proper protection like this heavily reduces secondary damage while the larger drying process is underway. It is a textbook example of fast, effective action to save your valuables from the immense ambient humidity that always follows a flood.
Section 3. The hidden moisture threat.
So here is where we hit a massive misconception: visible water versus hidden moisture. A lot of people assume that damage stops the second the visible water is wiped up. But in reality, according to the Institute of Inspection, Cleaning, and Restoration Certification S500 standard, water migrates incredibly quickly through porous materials and assemblies. Your drywall literally absorbs moisture internally, acting like a giant sponge. Wood actively wicks water upwards through a process called capillary action. And your flooring? It can trap massive amounts of moisture completely out of sight, right underneath the surface boards.
Just look at the stark contrast here. On the left, we've got a room where the baseboards and a section of drywall have been removed. From the surface of that room, it might have just looked mildly wet, right? But look at the image on the right. That is the backside of a piece of removed drywall. That horrific, extensive microbial growth was secretly spreading right behind the wall, feeding on the hidden moisture trapped in the dark void. If you just rely on household fans and assume surfaces are dry just because they feel dry to the touch, well, this is exactly what happens inside your walls.
Section 4. Why professional mitigation matters.
The thing is, professionals don't just guess where the water went, they actually track it.
Here we see a high-tech thermal imaging camera in use. These cameras detect temperature differences on surfaces. Because wet drywall is evaporating moisture, it cools down, and that shows up as a distinct, dark, or brightly colored temperature anomaly on the screen, exactly like that large purple and pink mass you're seeing here. This allows mitigators to hunt down the exact paths where invisible water has traveled, behind your walls and across your ceilings, without unnecessarily tearing down your whole house just to find it.
And once they spot those thermal anomalies, they verify them. Notice the professional moisture meter pressed directly into the material here. It gives an exact percentage of moisture content. These tools are absolutely required to accurately determine if materials are truly dry or if they're just dry on the surface while remaining completely soaked in the center. Without pinpointing precise moisture levels, you are quite frankly simply guessing.
We also absolutely cannot ignore the health risks here. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention explicitly warns that floodwater and unaddressed moisture problems can heavily contribute to microbial growth. Remember that terrifying mold on the back of the drywall we looked at earlier? Fast, professional extraction and drying are critical, not just for saving the structure of your home, but for preventing serious biological hazards from taking root in the very air you breathe.
So how do you actually get rid of that hidden moisture? Well, by using industrial structural drying equipment like this heavy-duty air mover and dehumidifier setup within a contained plastic barrier. Especially in humid places like Greenville, the natural humidity actively slows down evaporation. You cannot just open a window and hope for the best. Overcoming that high humidity and extracting deep moisture requires intense airflow to force evaporation, paired with industrial dehumidification to physically pull that evaporated moisture right out of the air. It's a highly controlled science of managing both humidity and temperature.
Which leaves us with a pretty vital question to reflect on. Are you truly prepared to find the water you can't see? We've learned today that reacting to water damage isn't just about grabbing a mop. It's about stopping the source, prioritizing safety, and fundamentally understanding that what you see on the surface is just the tip of the iceberg. Fast action helps reduce the initial structural damage, sure, but recognizing the invisible dangers of hidden moisture, that is what truly saves a home. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and hey, stay safe out there.